So, in this chapter, lines and angles, we are going to study a number of things, and that is a point, a segment, a ray, a line. Okay? And then we are going to learn about different kinds of angles. These things we have already studied, and we are going to learn about different more angles. So that is complementary angles, supplementary angles, adjacent angles, and linear pair. Okay. Now, how did this line originate? Okay, or rather, you can say, how did it all start? In your lower classes, you have already studied about a line and angle. But line is nothing but a number of points put together. Okay, so I can have a point, another point, and keep putting them together. What I will get is a line. Okay, so a line is basically n number of points put together. They're all marching in. You know, you have the song, oh when the saints go marching in, oh when the saints go marching in. They go in a line, right? So a number of points put together will be called as a line. That is in our general understanding. But there are a number of things. You know, I put the word point over here and the line comes after that, because this is in a general situation. What we say is a line, okay? But when you put a number of points together, what you get is a segment. So here is an example of a segment. This from here to here will be called as a segment, okay? When we talk about a ray, there should be a starting point to it, and then it continues. So in this case, I can say that this entire thing is a ray because it has a starting point and then it continues. The arrow represents that these collection of points are marching in front. So which will be a ray. Okay. When you talk about a line, all that happens is this doesn't have a starting point nor an ending point. So it goes on. Okay. So both the sides, it can extend both the sides. So I can have number of points on this side. I can have number of points on this side. So this will become a line. So I hope you are clear with this understanding. When we say lines or a line, these things come into play. Now, how do you write? A point can be represented with a dot and some letter for it. So I can write this as B. Okay. So I will say point B. Okay. When I am talking about a segment, when I'm drawing it, it will be like this. Okay. Sometimes you draw a tiny, dashes on both the sides, just to tell that this is the starting point, this is the ending point. Okay. And I can name it as AB. Okay. A ray, I told you, as I said, it has a starting point, but it doesn't have an ending point. It goes on and on and on, right? So I can do this as it has a starting point, okay, C, and then it continues, right? So I can write DOK, okay? It goes on. So a tiny arrow. So a starting point and there's no ending point. This will be a ray. Now when the ending points or ending points are not even there and arrows are on both the sides, we call it as a line. So it will be drawn as, you can name it as P. So a point, okay, then comes a segment, a ray, and then a line. Okay. Usually we would always talk about, straight away the moment we draw one line, a segment, we would say it is a line. But in mathematics, in geometry, when we are talking about, we usually have a defined way of drawing it. But what about if I want to write this? How will I write a line? Okay, you will say like this, right? Most of us will say. But symbolically, how do we represent? We can write this as PQ, and then I can put arrows over here like this. Okay, so this I can read this as line PQ. I would not say it as a segment. I would call it as PQ. Just the way, like, whenever you write your name, in front of it you write master if you're a boy, or Mr. if you're an elderly man, or you will write Miss if you're a girl. So there is a suffix or initial given to, right? Or if a person is a doctor, you'll put DR in front. So just that way, this tells us what exactly it is, whether it is a line, whether it is a segment. If it is a ray, then simple, right? So just write CD and then this way. So this will be called as ray CD. And if it's a segment, then you usually write without any arrows. So segment AB, ray CD, and a line PQ. But knowing all this, when you are writing it in general terms, we simply write PQ for understanding purpose. Okay, every time we can't keep on drawing these arrows, and so we just write PQ and we understand that it is a line. But somewhere down in your mind, you should remember that how this thing can be exactly written. When you're reading sometimes your textbook, you should be able to understand what is a ray, what is a segment, what is a line, the difference between them. So a point is just a dot. You can say, I call it as a vertex also. Okay, so just a dot with, you can give some letter to it. A segment, okay, which doesn't, it has a starting point, it has an ending point, over, starting and ending, okay. A ray has a starting point, does not have an ending point at all, so it can go on and on and on. A line also doesn't have an ending point on both the sides, so again, this will be a line. This can extend on either sides. So I hope this part is clear. Okay, now when we are talking about angles, what's an angle? And probably you must have studied these kind of angles. But let us understand what exactly is an angle. So an angle, the main thing to start with an angle is a point. Okay, so I can say, okay, an angle has a starting point. Okay, now something that has a starting point and doesn't have an ending, what is it? It is a ray. Okay, so I can say an angle is nothing but two rays starting from a common point or a common vertex. Alright, you have studied what is an angle in your lower class, probably in the 5th standard. Okay, so what is an angle? An angle is a ray, okay, or two rays which are starting from a common vertex. So this is a vertex. Okay, so I'm saying what an angle, right? So it starts with a ray and then I have another ray. So it is starting from this common vertex. Okay, so this will become as an angle. Now the same way, all these angles, they all start from a common vertex, extend. This also starts from a common vertex, extends in a direction. This also starts from a common vertex, extends. This also starts from a common vertex and extends, right? The lines extend. But when all these angles look different and they all have different names for them, okay? So called as an acute angle. You must have studied this. So acute angle. Okay. So now how do you define an acute angle? Okay. Let me tell you how to remember it first. Whenever you go for any function or christening especially, and then there's a small baby, and then you look at that baby and what do you say? Ah, so cute, right? You say that, right? So cute, okay? Acute is when the angle is small, okay? The word acute will be when the angle is small. How small? Smaller than 90 degrees, okay? So if you see an old, uncle walking on the street, would you call him cute? No, you don't call him, right? So he's walking straight, right? So 90 degrees, okay? Anything smaller than 90 degree angle will be called as acute. So cute, acute, okay? Acute. And then when it is over here, we call it as a right angle. So acute, which is smaller than 90. Anything smaller than 90 will be called as acute angle. So what is the degree to say that it is a right angle? 90 degrees. Okay. So whenever an angle is measuring 90 degrees, it will be called as right angle. Anything smaller than 90, okay, it can be 89.9 also, will be also called as acute angle, okay? Acute, okay? Acute, remember that. This will be called as an obtuse angle. So anything, this is your right angle, anything more than that, so the moment it is 90 and across 90, it will be called as an obtuse angle, okay? So duck to law, right angle, Zander law. Hope you remember this. Acute, right angle, that is 90, and then obtuse. Okay, so obtuse angle. Acute, 90, obtuse. This angle will be called as a reflex angle. Okay, so reflex angle means what? Anything that is extending from 180 degrees, okay? So this will become 180 degrees, and anything more than 180, that means I start, this is the ray that I have, and this is 180 degrees, right? So anything more than this will be called as reflex angle, okay? So reflex angle is this. I hope this thing is also clear. We started with line, then we saw how a line starts. So it starts from a point, then a segment, then you continue, then it becomes a ray, then it becomes a line. When two rays start from a common vertex, we get an angle, and based on how much is the degree of an angle, we call it as an acute angle, we call it as a right angle, we call it obtuse angle, and if it is more than 180, we call it as a reflex angle. So I hope these things are clear, and this is all what you have started or known. If you never knew about it and you are learning it for the first time, good, okay? But after knowing these angles, what are these then? Complementary, supplementary, adjacent, linear, okay? These are nothing but, in a simple way to put it to you would be angle soye, okay? So all these angles which are there, their relatives are these, okay? So relatively it is not part of that family, okay? Little closer one. So if I say that this is you, this is your brother and your sister and so on, these are your cousins, okay? So that would be all these angles. Now we will study about each of these angles right now, this all in the next class, okay? But let us understand what is the meaning of complementary angles. Okay? Did I say complementary angle? No, I said complementary angles. Okay? Angles, when there's a plural, there are two. Okay? Complementary means all you have to remember is two angles. Okay? I can just draw any angle, right? So one angle plus another angle. Okay? Sum of two angles, when it is 90, it will be called as complementary angles. Okay, complementary angles. So, what is the meaning of the word complementary? Sometimes you must have heard that the word complement. This is my friend and we complement each other. Even when my friend doesn't have a pen or a rough book or an eraser or ruler, I can understand that he wants something. So a compliment, you without your friend telling you, you know what you want. So you can say it as you all complement each other. Complement meaning two angles, okay, whose sum is 90 degrees. Just that much. Now how will I remember all this? Simple. C, right? Complement. What is this? 90. Okay. So when just a small 9, okay, it gives you the sum number is 90, right? So when two angles added to give you the measure of those sum is 90, it will be called as complementary angles. Okay. So you can think of different examples. Maybe I have an angle, okay, acute angle, whose measure is 50 degrees. Okay, so an angle whose measure is 50 degrees. Okay, complement meaning I need another angle. So what I have to to say that it is complementary, what should be the sum? The sum has to be 90. Which means the other angle that I am considering should be 40 degrees. So 50 plus 40 will become 90, right? So sum of these two angles, okay, will give me 90, which means that these two angles are complement of each other. Now, is it compulsory that they have to be 50 and 40 only? I can have so many combinations. Okay, I can have 30 and 60. Correct? I can have 80 plus 10. So there are a number of combinations. Can you try writing different two angles summed up to give you 90, which will become complementary angles? Try it out. Okay? So complementary angles meaning two angles, right? Summing up to give you 90. Let us look at an example over here. Okay? So I don't have another L. Let us consider that. Okay, this is one angle. So one angle over here. Okay, one angle, and so this angle plus this angle is giving me 90, right? So these two angles are complement of each other. Now, is it again compulsory that they should have start from the common vertex? Is it compulsory that you and your relatives or soini are staying in one house? Not compulsory, right? You might stay in Margaon, your cousin might stay in Pension, but you are cousins. So same way, when you are talking about complementary angles, they need not be at a common vertex. Okay? They can be anywhere, as long as the sum of both those angles becomes 90 degrees. Okay? Which will be called as complementary angles. I hope the idea of complementary angles is very clear. Two angles added up to give you 90 is complementary. Okay, they need not start from a common point. They can be anywhere. This angle, together 90 degrees, complementary. If we have understood that this is complementary, then what is supplementary? Okay, I'll tell you how to remember first. Just the way I told you how to remember complementary angles, right? So supplementary, when I'm talking, all I have to do is put a line like this, and then this becomes 180. Okay, so this, okay, 180. Right? So when I said supplementary angles, right? Which means two angles added together to give you the sum as 180 will be called as supplementary angles. Okay? So complementary, two angles were added to give you 90. Supplementary, two angles are added to give you 180. Okay? So you can think of you, your brother, your sister, right? So any of them added to give you 180 will become supplementary. So I can have maybe 100 as one angle plus 80 second angle. So sum of these two angles, 100 degrees and 80 degrees, together becomes supplementary angles. I hope the idea of supplementary angles is very clear. Complementary is when we add two angles together to get 90 degrees. Supplementary is when two angles are added to get 180 degrees. They need not be at a common vertex. So when I am saying 180 degrees, it need not be that, the angles are starting at one point over here. It is just that, angles are wherever. Just the way I have told you, you are staying in Margam as one angle. Your cousin is staying somewhere in Benjamin or Mopsa. So there, two angles put together, sum is 180. It will be called as supplementary angle. So simple logic, how to remember, I have already told you, complementary CO, just put a line 90, you can remember it as complementary angles. Supplementary, just put a line and gives you an idea of 180, right? So two angles added together will become supplementary angles. So I hope this is clear, the idea of complementary and supplementary angles. We can understand about adjacent angles. So I told you these were your family members, okay, close family. These were your relatives, right? So when you have your relatives just as your neighbor, so maybe your dad or your sister or someone has just got married in the next house next door, okay, so side neighbor. So that will be called as adjacent angle. So let me give you an example. Okay, so this is your house. Okay, so this is your house, and your neighbor is your cousin itself. So now here, what in this case, what is happening? I have two angles put together. So this is one angle, this is another angle. So this will be called as adjacent angles. Adjacent on the side of it is nothing but an adjacent angle. So two angles when they have a common vertex. This is very much important. Okay, so one angle. Okay, so I have one angle over here. The next angle that we are talking about should have or should be the neighbor of this angle. Next one. Okay, but then only I can say that they are adjacent angles. Is it compulsory that it has to be 90 degrees or 180 degrees? Not compulsory. Okay, so in this case, what is happening is I have two angles next, right? So next door neighborhood. So when this is possible, this will be called as adjacent angles. Okay. How do you define them? They are segments or rays that are coming out from a common vertex and extended. So this is one angle, this is another angle. So this will be called as adjacent angles. Okay. Not compulsory that it has to be 90, 180 angles. Measurement is not important, but what you should remember is these two angles, side door neighbors, are called as adjacent angles. I hope this idea is clear. Complementary angles, some is 90, supplementary, some is 180. These are neighbors just close to each other. That is linear pair. It is nothing but you need to keep in mind that we are talking in terms of these two. Okay, these two combinations will give you an idea of linear pair. So what is it? Supplementary tells us two things, right? That there are two angles and sum of which has to be 180 degrees. Supplementary angles. Adjacent angles tell you that they have to be neighbors. Linear pair is using all these properties that sum of those two angles has to be 180, they have to be adjacent angles, then I can say that it is a linear pair. So first of all, let us draw a 180 degree line. So a line which is 180. So angle from here to here. If you use your protractor, you can measure them, keep it over here, and then you will realize that it is 180 degrees. Okay. Now you wondering what is the protractor? That the one which we call D Derivata is nothing but a protractor. It is not a D. Okay, it's a protractor. So 180 degrees. What did we say? Two angles whose sum is 180, right? So now anywhere, right? So two angles. This is one angle, this is another angle. So two angles whose sum is nothing but 180 will be called as linear pair, and they have to be adjacent to each other. Okay, what do we mean by the word adjacent? Neighbors. Or symbol to remember is in a form of a definition, it starts from a common vertex or a common point, and the arm of both the angles is common. So this arm of this angle is common to this arm of this angle. Okay, so then I can say that these angles are, if the sum is 180 and they are adjacent, then we call it as linear pair. So I hope all these lines and angles and their sinusoid is very clear. So we learned what entire thing we studied in this entire big class. We studied about a point, we studied about a segment, then we studied about a ray. It starts from a common point and it has a start point and then keeps on going. Line is a collection of points extending on both the sides. Then we saw that when two rays originate from one point, if the measure of angle is less than 90, it will be called as acute angle. If it is exactly 90, it will be called as right angle. If it is slightly more than 90 and less than 180, it will be called as obtuse angle. If it is greater than 180 degrees, then it will be called as a reflex angle. Reflex angle. And then we studied different angles that are complementary, supplementary, adjacent, and linear pair. Okay. Now the question that you should have in your mind is that here both these angles that I have drawn are acute angles, right? But is it compulsory? Is it mandatory that both these angles should be acute angles to say it is complementary? Or can it be like two right angles, can it become complementary? No, right? Because one right angle itself, the angle measurement is 90. So what will be the other angle? Complementary means 2. Okay, we complement each other, 2 angles. So 2 right angles cannot be complementary. Can 2 obtuse angles be complementary angles? No, because measure of one angle, which is an obtuse angle, itself is more than 90. So how can they be complementary? Okay, 2 acute angles can be complementary. So if one angle is 45, the other one is also 45, complement of that, right? So 2 of them added together will give me 90. So 45 plus 45 will give me 90. So 2 acute angles can be complementary angles. So this is a very broad idea that you should have when you need some questions. There can be a question where they are saying, 2 acute angles, summed up to be, are complementary to each other. 2 equal acute angles. The moment this is, that sound. 2 acute angles. Okay, especially when I say 2 equal acute angles, there can be only one possibility, and that is both these angles are 45 degrees. Equal, right? So 45 and 45. There is no other combination of numbers which is equal and yet you get complementary. So it is just one. So it can be asked for fill in the blanks. So you should be smart enough to know how it is possible. Okay. Then what about supplementary? Can 2 acute angles give you supplementary angles? No. So the minimum or the last that I can have is 89 degrees for an angle, which will be called as acute. So 89 plus 89, will it give me a sum as 180 degrees? It won't give, right? So 2 acute angles cannot give me supplementary angles. Okay. What about 2 right angles? Can you give me supplementary angles? Yes. So again, a fill in the blanks is possible where I say 2 equal angles, okay, give me a supplementary angle, and that is possible only with 90 degree angle. That is right. So you should remember that. What about 2 obtuse angles? Obtuse angle will be more than 90, right? So it can be 91 and so on. So 91 plus another 91, will it give me 180? No, it will be giving me more than 180 degrees, right? So they can't be supplementary. Can 1 acute angle and 1 obtuse angle give me supplementary angles? Yes, 100%, right? So here I am giving you an example. Obtuse angle and acute angle together gives me a supplementary angle. Adjacent angles, so they can be 2 acute angles, they can be 2 obtuse angles. So there is no a very hard and fast rule that it has to be 180 or there is no angle measurement as such. Just that the angles have to be side next to each other, right? So then should have a common point. So then they are called as adjacent angles. Common point, common arm. Linear pair, compulsory 180 degrees. Okay. So sometimes students have a confusion between supplementary and linear pair. The moment it becomes 180, they say like it's a linear pair. But here, not compulsory that they are next to each other. They can be anywhere. I can draw 2 separate angles at 2 different points. Only the measurement is very important. Some of them. Okay. So complementary, supplementary, adjacent, and linear pair. So I hope this entire thing is very clear, and if you did understand all this, then please don't forget to hit the like button and share the video with your friends so that they also have an idea about what is lines and what is angles. Enjoy. Till then, this is Joel saying bye. Take care and God bless you.